Yo, 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 what is going on, IK Familia? It is your boy BN, aka Mr. Kingdom Builder, and today we are going to be dropping knowledge and just meta experience bombs like it is our day job. Okay, one of the biggest things I really want to talk about today is something that probably the majority player just doesn't really think about, or more so, may even think to look at as an actual thing that really affects them, even though it does in a lot more ways than they may even know. And this also directly relates and comes right back to a games, and more specifically, when we're just talking about the genre of kingdom builders within Infinity Kingdom and others, goes into the overall player retention for that game and how sustainable activity can be with players on a day in, day out basis. So before we really break this down and just really hit you with some Jimmy Neutron Brain Blast moments, as always, make sure you sub, like, ring that notification bell, and if you want to join and be a part of our conversation, hit up the Discord. You can find that in the pinned comment and description down below. All right, so the big thing I really want to kind of start off before we get to the meat of everything is looking at what is most important, right? When you are a player, and I go back to my days when I first started playing Kingdom Builders, and when I first started playing, what I realized is that my experience, how I felt about a game, before I ever cared to look into what events are in the game, how am I going to be able to participate in all these other things to do, was, well, let me first learn how to level my account, right? Let me click on things, read things. How can I upgrade? Looking for guides and videos out there. But I never once, when you're initially learning a game, the first thing you do not go to is say, okay, well, let me go ahead and read up on all these events, right? This is for the majority perspective. I'm talking about when you play your very first Kingdom Builder, not if you've already been playing many, but if you played your very first Kingdom Builder, right? Or you're playing a genre you've never played before. Usually, you're trying to get the basics down of just how to level up your account and how to upgrade things. Maybe you're trying to figure out your priority order before you kind of start even touching on, okay, well, hey, are there characters in this game? How do I upgrade them? How do I level them? And this is even before you get to things like events, let alone in Infinity Kingdom, areas such as Contention Relics, things like King of the Hill, even though it is an event, but it's more of a bigger event. These types of things. Before you even touch any of these events, you are, for the most part, looking around your city and trying to figure out, okay, well, I got to upgrade this building. What do I have to upgrade to get my castle to the next level, right? You're probably going out there and attacking some gnomes and, trying to figure out, using your AP and how that works. And maybe you're working on things such as comps and, how, what, maybe I just do all of them for the same tier, right? Kind of just keep it simple, right? You have to kind of think about how were you thinking in your most basic form of when you were first starting. And now some people might be wondering, well, boss, how are you going to tie all this back in? Don't worry, I'm going to blow your minds away, okay? Let me get some watered down apple juice. Don't judge me. So now, how we're going to tie all this in and why this is so important to every single player, but more specifically, the game developers, right? If you are a game developer, or you're someone who's considering making a game within this genre, right? Well, I like just to simplistically refer to it as a kingdom builder, right? Sometimes you'll see the tags on these games as 4 times, or even real-time strategy is probably accurate to an extent, or just the strategy genre, but the 4 times, or the 4X, is the one I've been seeing a little more often. I just like to call them kingdom builders because I think that's the most accurate way to really describe it, is that if you care about your game's longevity, if you care about your game not only getting the most amount of players to download it and to try it out, but more importantly, the most amount of player retention for the individuals that after they download your game, keep playing it, right, rather than uninstalling or slowing down their overall activity. What is the most important factor that plays into that? And that's really where we're getting at, is the meat of understanding what the average player thinks about. Remember, you can have the best events in your game. Your game can be talked about, and you could be the number one game on the market, but you may not have great player retention, right? It's kind of like having a high turnover rate, right? You might consider Walmart to be, like whatever, however they say it, right? Is like one of the largest or the largest retailer in the U.S., right? They're up there. Haven't looked up any stats lately. But if you read about them or you see them in the news, you also associate, right? Or even somewhere like Amazon, right? That you've been seeing somewhere in the news as of late, right? Or even as it's been happening for a while with articles popping up, that these places just have high turnover. Now, this is what I'm talking about. When you're approaching players downloading your game, they have high turnover, right? The objective is to try and have the highest level of player retention at the end of the day. Because if you have a new game and it's hot, people are going to download it. They're going to check it out, right? That's kind of a passive. You want to keep the most amount of players playing for the longest amount of time. And the fact is that no one cares about events when they first start to download your game. You know what they do care about, though? They care about what their daily experience is in the game. Why? Because that's all they have to go off of when you're thinking about what they're going to be doing every single day that they're playing. And the way that we describe this would be, well, okay, hey, am I getting attacked, right? Am I conversating with people in game, right? Is my alliance chat active? How is my leader doing, right? Are they sending me informative mails? Are they interacting and engaging with people? If I ask a question in Alliance chat, is that being answered within a decent amount of time, right? Or kind of semi-quickly? Again, right? Is the kingdom or the server I'm playing in, right? Are there just rogues everywhere and people are getting attacked constantly, right? When I'm trying to go out and gather, are my gatherers being attacked? When I'm going out and trying to attack gnomes or bosses to fill up my trove, or if I'm trying to increase my my mortal levels, right, from going out there, if I'm trying to get more gear, am I getting attacked while I'm farming and actively playing? The experience, right, or better yet, or I should say, let me add on to that. If I'm in world chat, and let's say world chat is popping off, and I just read through a little bit, and maybe it's toxic or something is happening there. Literally any of these things can factor into the average player's experience in the game. These are things that can cause players to either decide in that moment, am I going to keep playing your game, or am I going to uninstall and go try something else? Or least worst case, will I re-roll and go try another kingdom out to maybe decide before I potentially then later decide to uninstall, right? Now, these are worst case scenarios, right? But these are things that the average player cares about. And this is something that no metric, no stats, no data will ever be able to tell you. Why? Because all this comes down to is player psychology. And the only way you're ever going to figure these things out is, humbly and respectfully, is if, one, you've played as long as I have in as many kingdoms or servers as I have, or you're just someone who really pays attention to trends, right? You really talk to a lot of people. You understand why people stop playing in kingdoms, or you understand why they uninstall. You pay attention to what people post on the Discord, what they post in Alliance chat and world chats. You really have to understand these things from the player's perspective, and therefore the player's psychology. Again, you're never going to be able to appropriately gauge this on any kind of data that you can consume in the game. You really have to, this is more of like what I refer to as like street smarts. You have to feel this out by paying attention and reading in between the lines. And what this comes if we just cycle all this back down, what it comes down to, even beyond the average player's experience on what they see, what happens to them, who they talk to, it comes down to bolstering, right, or better yet, needing to bolster how that experience can be better within the home kingdom. And I'll definitely make another video on this that talks about it a lot more. I just wanted to share this with you because, one, this was a great conversation point that I had with Bunny from SA when we were doing our kind of masterclass on kingdom management, and I wanted to expand on this because this is something I'm really passionate about. And it's funny because I've actually had a few kind of like indie devs that have reached out to me because I've made some posts and some videos about this where they've actually come and asked me about it. Like, hey, why do you think player psychology has such a huge impact in these games. And when they heard me speak about it, they reached out to me and they asked me a few more questions about it because they were trying to get a better understanding, because what I said makes sense. And it is, and it does, if you really take time to study the game beyond just playing, is that kingdom builders are so much more than just you're a player, leveling your account, playing with other people, trying to level your accounts to who's ever going to be the strongest so you can try and reach max level as fast as you can. I mean, it's so much more than that. And part of me has always felt that when we look at this genre, when we look at these types of games, man, we are only just scratching the surface when I look at what the majority of people really talk about. I mean, think about how many content creators out there talk about player psychology and how important it is to the sustainability of player retention and how it can increase overall player activity within a game. You look at some of these other big kingdom builders, they could arguably have 2 to 5, maybe 10 times the player base if they looked at these things and really recognized how important it is to have certain mechanics and tools and support options in the game within a home kingdom that can actually bolster this. It can increase this. And this is something that has always really boggled my mind, because it's something that no one really talks about and you don't really hear ever addressed from the developers or from other players out there, at least from what I usually see the majority of the time, if not all the time. I've never really heard anyone kind of talk about these things that I do. And that's not necessarily to kind of put myself in my own bubble. It's just to highlight that this is not a widespread conversation point or discussion point, if you will. So anyways, with that being said, I'd love to hear what you guys think. In my next video, which will kind of be a part 2 on this, I'm going to talk about some of the specific things that if they added in the home kingdoms for tools and support options, how these things can bolster activity, increase player retention, and therefore an overall game's player base. And that's going to be a fantastic video to watch. But I really wanted to take this opportunity to kind of dive into the I guess the pretext, if you will, the beginning portions, right? Give you a little bit of an appetizer to really think about. I would love to know, really at this point, if you are someone who understands anything, if you've seen anything about what I'm talking about when it comes to player psychology and how this is arguably the biggest impacted area into a game, which is when these players first start off playing. I'm talking new players that are first starting off, and arguably for veterans as well, but really hitting at that first, because again, if you're a new player, your initial impression is by far the most important thing that is going to factor into whether you keep playing or you don't, right? And then for how long, if so. So let me know what you think in the comments down below. If you're someone who's experienced this in any way, shape, or form, I want to know. If you're understanding, you see where I'm coming from, if maybe you've experienced or you've noticed this in another way, or if you've ever played a game in which you felt that your first experience or your first impressions for that game were were from some of the things I touched on, and if that factored into or impacted you to stop playing. I would love to know. Let me know down there. That is it for me. For me and my little lady, we are out. Until next time, I'll catch you later.